Night after night, millions of people over the age of 35 find themselves awake at the crossroads of fatigue and frustration, watching hours dissolve into quiet, unproductive anxiety. They climb into bed with the honest intention to sleep, only to be betrayed by an alertness that will not loosen its grip. They wake before the alarm with the taste of exhaustion. They nap in the afternoon to survive the day, and then lie awake at night wondering why sleep will not come. This is not a mere inconvenience. For a growing body of evidence, and for many clinicians who treat older adults, chronic disturbed sleep is a clear, measurable threat to physical health, cognitive clarity, and emotional resilience. It shortens attention, dulls memory, raises blood pressure, deepens insulin resistance, and over time, subtly but surely undermines quality of life. Yet among the remedies and the remedy's promises, the patient who simply wants to close their eyes and rest is frequently left swirling through a carousel of inconsistent advice, restless with uncertainty. In the quiet wing of a Tokyo hospital, a neurologist observed something that threw this carousel into sharp relief. The observation was not theatrical, nor was the discovery instantly sensational in the headlines. It began with a patient story, an elderly man who had spent years waking up at 3 a.m., ruminating about small regrets and the next day's obligations. A woman who had stopped recognizing the cadence of sleep after menopause. A retired teacher whose brain seemed to resist the natural evening descent into calm. These were not outliers. They were the faces of a pervasive pattern. Over 2 decades of carefully documented clinical work, meticulous sleep studies, and repeated biochemical assays, this clinician cultivated a hypothesis that returned again and again. More often than expected, older patients with persistent insomnia shared not merely life stressors or bad habits, but a consistent shortfall of a biochemical resource the brain needs to orchestrate sleep. That statement deserves a quiet, forensic scrutiny. The brain is not a switch that one flips on and off. Sleep is a complex choreography of electrical waves, hormones and chemical signals. Neurotransmitters modulate arousal, peptides herald the transition into deeper stages, endocrine rhythms whisper when night yields to day. Everything in that orchestra must be playing with accurate timing and the right instruments. When one component is missing or falters, the entire performance can become dissonant. What the neurologist noticed was not simply a single missing instrument, but a systematic scarcity of a nutrient cofactor that the brain uses to synthesize the neurochemicals responsible for that calm, descending arc into restorative sleep. It was a subtle deficiency, not always obvious on a routine blood test, but palpable in the physiology. A brain predisposed to alertness when it should be winding down, a sympathetic nervous system that remained keyed up, a cascade that failed to generate the quiet, the slow wave sleep, the consolidation of memory that define a healthy night. I do not offer this as hyperbole. The value of scientific observation is that it can be replicated and measured. Over time, the neurologist introduced a targeted approach in his practice. Rather than another hypnotic pill or a transient sedative, he probed the role of specific nutrient pathways, aligned them with circadian timing, and adjusted behaviors that either supported or undermined the brain's own sleep chemistry. Patients who embraced the approach, in carefully supervised contexts, reported more than a marginal improvement. Some reported, in language that suggested relief rather than mere convenience, that sleep returned with a fidelity they had not remembered since their youth. That phrase, sleep returned, deserves emphasis because it implies the restoration of an endogenous capacity rather than dependence on external sedatives. You may rightly ask whether this is another trend dressed up as science. There is caution to be had. The history of sleep medicine is littered with promising leads that ultimately proved to be incomplete or applicable only to narrow subgroups. Yet there is also reason for optimism. The brain's competence to regulate sleep declines for many people with age, not because the system is irretrievably broken, but because the scaffolding that supports neurotransmitter production is less robust. Some of the scaffolding can be rebuilt with the right inputs, at the right times, and with behavioral conditions that respect the biology of sleep. The neurologist's approach is pragmatic. identify the chemical link that is commonly undersupplied, restore it through safe and accessible means, and use simple behavioral cues to amplify the restoration. It is not a miracle tonic. It is a methodical biological correction allied to sensible sleep hygiene. This video is not a panacea claim. It is an invitation to understand the biology, to evaluate evidence, and to consider practical steps that older adults can use to reclaim nights that feel restful. What you will hear here is grounded in the clinical perspective of a physician steeped in neurology and sleep science, expressed in language meant to inform, not to confuse, and to give you agency in a field crowded with hasty promises. You will learn why certain nutrients matter more as the brain ages, how common lifestyle factors can sabotage recovery, and why some simple timing strategies can transform a supplement or a dietary change from a neutral act into a neurologically relevant intervention. Before we proceed, you should know what this will not be. It will not prescribe medication dosages, it will not encourage the abrupt cessation of prescribed treatments, and it will not substitute for personalized medical advice. Instead, it will lay out the physiological principles, the clinical observations, and the stepwise logic that underpinned the neurologist's method. This is meant to be educational and immediately actionable within the scope of general guidance. If the approach described here resonates with your experience, the appropriate next step is a conversation with your healthcare provider, informed by the details that follow. In Tokyo, where tradition and technology coexist in perfect symmetry, Dr. Kenji Matsumoto's office stands as a small sanctuary of calm precision. Patients arrive from across Japan, some carrying stacks of medical reports, others simply carrying the weight of months without rest. The neurologist is known not for radical inventions, but for his relentless patience, his capacity to observe what others overlook. His discovery, the one that now draws global attention, began not with a breakthrough in a laboratory, but with the quiet consistency of listening to what the body was already saying. He noticed that most of his insomnia patients displayed a subtle but measurable decline in neural recovery markers. Their electroencephalograms revealed shallow sleep phases. Their hormone panels suggested a body that tried to rest, but could not sustain the descent into slow-wave sleep. Matsumoto began to suspect that the issue was not primarily psychological, as many believed, but biochemical. Something in the brain's machinery of calm was missing, and that absence rippled outward into restlessness. He directed his attention to the enzymes responsible for synthesizing serotonin and melatonin, two molecules central to sleep regulation. Over and over again, he found the same deficit, a lack of one specific nutrient that functions as the cofactor, the silent assistant, without which the orchestra of sleep cannot play. His insight did not come in a single flash of revelation, but through hundreds of nights spent analyzing data. In his small lab, surrounded by screens of patient graphs, he noticed a recurring pattern. Whenever levels of that nutrient were replenished, through diet or supplement, the brain's night rhythm seemed to repair itself. Patients began falling asleep faster, waking fewer times, and most importantly, reporting that they felt rested. It was, he later said in an interview, as if the brain had been waiting for permission to rest. One of his first patients to benefit from this approach was a 68-year-old retired architect who had not slept through the night in over 10 years. After incorporating the specific vitamin and adjusting the timing of his evening meals, the man reported a full night's rest on the third day. The neurologist was cautious, assuming it might be coincidence, but the results persisted. Weeks later, brainwave recordings confirmed the restoration of deep delta waves, the physiological signature of true sleep. The findings spread quietly through the medical community, first as curiosity, then as hope. The story of Dr. Matsumoto's discovery is not the story of a pill, it is the story of precision. He demonstrated that even a small correction, if it strikes at the biological root, can reawaken the body's capacity for balance. His work reminded the world of something medicine sometimes forgets, that the human body often holds its own cure if we can simply supply it with the missing key. And as you will see in the coming explanation, that missing key is astonishingly simple. So simple that many overlook it entirely. Before we move further, a small pause to remind you, if you find this kind of content valuable, informative, and worth your time, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. It's free, it helps the channel grow, and it ensures that you receive more scientifically grounded insights like this one. Many of our viewers are between their 40s and 70s, and we create this material precisely for you, to help you understand your body, your brain, and your well-being with clarity and respect. Now, let us move from story to mechanism, from observation to explanation, and see exactly why your brain, when deprived of one critical vitamin, begins to lose its natural ability to sleep. To understand why the absence of one vitamin can unravel the architecture of sleep, we must first step into the elegant machinery of the brain. Picture the nervous system as a vast city illuminated by billions of microscopic lights. Each light represents a neuron, and each neuron communicates with the next through a chemical messenger. These messengers, called neurotransmitters, are built from raw materials your body gathers from food and transforms through metabolism. They are not infinite. They depend on what you give your body and when you give it. When you are young, this system runs effortlessly. The enzymes are active, the nutrients abundant, and the conversion of amino acids into serotonin and melatonin happens seamlessly. But as we age, several changes converge. Absorption in the gut weakens, liver efficiency decreases, and stress hormones become dominant. The consequence is that the raw materials for calm, the building blocks of serotonin, become scarce. Without enough of them, the body struggles to produce melatonin, the hormone that signals the night. The brain stays awake because, chemically, it cannot afford to fall asleep. The vitamin identified by Dr. Matsumoto acts like the ignition key in this process. It doesn't create serotonin by itself, but it enables the enzyme that does. In biochemical terms, it is a cofactor, an activator of transformation. Without it, the pathway is blocked. With it, the machinery hums to life. Imagine an engine deprived of spark. It has fuel, it has air, but no ignition. That is what happens in the brain of someone who lies awake at night despite feeling exhausted. Their mind is ready to rest, but the chemistry that signals sleep never fully activates. This deficiency can be deceptive. A person may eat well, exercise, and take common supplements, yet still lack this nutrient where it matters most, inside the cells of the nervous system. That is because stress, caffeine, alcohol, and even late-night exposure to blue light can deplete or neutralize it. The modern lifestyle, particularly in older adults who rely on multiple medications, compounds the problem. Over time, the gap widens between what the brain needs and what it receives, until insomnia becomes the new normal. Dr. Matsumoto's research showed that restoring this single nutrient could, within minutes, reactivate the calm-inducing branch of the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic circuit. This is the system that slows the heartbeat, deepens the breath, and prepares the body for rest. In his words, sleep is not an act of will, it is an act of chemistry. The more balanced the chemistry, the less effort it takes to surrender to sleep. Understanding this mechanism is not just academic, it is empowering. It means that sleeplessness is not a personal failure, not a moral weakness, but a reversible biological imbalance. When you correct that imbalance, you do not need to force sleep. It comes to you. The body, when given the proper signals, knows exactly what to do. And this, as the neurologist emphasized, is why so many people feel an almost immediate response once the nutrient level is corrected. Because the system was never broken. It was merely waiting for the missing signal to begin its nightly symphony again. When Dr. Matsumoto finally revealed the nature of the missing element, the medical community reacted with both intrigue and skepticism. The nutrient he referred to was not exotic, nor was it new. It was vitamin B6, pyridoxine, the same molecule found in everyday foods such as bananas, chickpeas, avocados, and certain types of fish. Yet his claim was not that vitamin B6 was simply good for health. It was that it could, under the right circumstances, reactivate the sleep cascade almost immediately. He called it the brain's forgotten spark. The reason, he explained, was beautifully simple. B6 is essential for the conversion of tryptophan into serotonin, and later, serotonin into melatonin. Without it, that entire biochemical chain collapses like a bridge missing one crucial beam. What astonished his colleagues was the speed of the response. When given at the right time of day, and especially in older adults whose metabolism had slowed, the brain's production of serotonin could increase within an hour. Patients described an almost tangible softening of their internal tension, the kind of release that precedes true sleep. Within days, patterns normalized, and deep, restorative rest returned. For those who had battled years of sleepless nights, it felt like waking from a long exile. Why had no one noticed this before? Partly because vitamin B6 is so ordinary. In medicine, the simplest solutions often hide in plain sight. Many clinicians assumed that dietary intake was sufficient and never checked intracellular levels, where the true deficiency resides. Moreover, lifestyle habits, late-night screens, chronic stress, processed foods, slowly deplete the body's stores. The modern world, in short, erodes the very chemistry that nature designed to help us rest. Dr. Matsumoto's research simply put the missing piece back where it belonged. But there was another detail, one that he insisted was non-negotiable: timing. The vitamin's effect depended on when it was activated. He noticed that if taken too early in the day, the body would metabolize it during periods of high cortisol activity, neutralizing its benefits. When administered roughly 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime, especially alongside small amounts of magnesium and tryptophan-rich foods, it synchronized perfectly with the brain's natural circadian rhythm. The result was a biological harmony that felt almost instantaneous. This was the basis of his so-called 1-minute sleep activation method. The minute did not refer to how long the vitamin took to work, but rather to the short window during which the brain, properly primed, flipped its internal switch from wakefulness to rest. The method became a quiet phenomenon in Japan, spreading through clinics and sleep centers. It was not commercialized as a pill or supplement brand. Matsumoto refused to turn it into a product. He believed the power of the discovery was in its simplicity and accessibility. "What people need," he once said, "is not another pill, but permission to believe that their brain still knows how to sleep." And perhaps that is the most remarkable aspect of his work. It reminded people that healing is often a return to balance, not the addition of complexity. By the time Western journals began to publish translations of his research, countless patients had already reported success. Some improved within days, others within weeks. But in every case, the process began with a return to fundamentals, restoring biochemical balance, respecting timing, and creating an environment where the body could remember its rhythm. It was, in essence, the most natural cure imaginable. To grasp why such a modest intervention produces such dramatic results, we must consider what happens in the aging brain when that balance is lost. Imagine the neural landscape of someone in their 50s or 60s. The synapses, the connections between neurons, are slightly less responsive. The cells are less hydrated, the membranes less flexible, and the production of neurotransmitters slower. The brain becomes like a once brilliant orchestra that now plays with tired instruments. It tries to perform the symphony of sleep, but some of the notes no longer resonate. Add to this the noise of modern life. Exposure to blue light late at night, caffeine consumed to fight afternoon fatigue, anxiety fueled by endless news cycles, and a cascade of stress hormones that keep the body on alert. In such a storm, even the simplest act, falling asleep, becomes a battle. The sympathetic nervous system, responsible for alertness, stays active long after sunset, while its opposite, the parasympathetic system, remains dormant. The brain, deprived of vitamin B6 and related nutrients, cannot complete the synthesis of serotonin. Without serotonin, melatonin cannot rise, and without melatonin, the body never receives the signal that it is safe to rest. This is not mere fatigue, It is a form of neurological starvation. Dr. Matsumoto's work reframed insomnia as a nutritional disorder as much as a neurological one. He demonstrated that when the chemical foundation is restored, the mind follows naturally. Within minutes of activation, the brain begins to shift from high-frequency beta waves, associated with alertness, to slower alpha and theta patterns. Heart rate decreases, cortisol levels drop, and breathing becomes rhythmical. The entire body moves from defense to repair mode. For many, this transition feels miraculous, but it is not magic. It is biology performing as it should. For older adults, this process is particularly profound. With age, our natural stores of B6 diminish, and our ability to absorb it from food declines. The Japanese neurologist often compared it to a lamp whose filament weakens with time. The electricity is still there, he said, but the light cannot shine unless we replace the filament. Restoring the vitamin is like changing that filament. Suddenly, the light returns, not because the energy increased, but because the pathway is whole again. His findings also underscored a truth that resonates beyond science. Sleep is not an indulgence. It is a biological necessity for brain repair. During deep sleep, the brain's glymphatic system flushes out toxins, repairs damaged neurons, and resets emotional balance. Without it, the aging brain deteriorates faster, memory fades, and the risk of anxiety, depression, and cognitive decline skyrockets. When the neurological architecture of rest is restored, all of this reverses. People begin to think more clearly, remember better, and experience a calm that no sedative can replicate. As this understanding spread, Dr. Matsumoto's clinic became a place of quiet transformation. He would often meet patients not with prescriptions, but with education. He explained patiently how the smallest correction could yield the greatest relief. Your brain, he told them, is not broken. It is simply waiting for nourishment. That message alone, delivered with sincerity, was often the beginning of healing. Dr. Nakamura leaned forward slightly, his tone soft yet filled with conviction. If you truly want to sleep deeply and wake up refreshed, he said, you must nourish your nervous system, and that begins with vitamin B6. He explained that while most people associate vitamins with energy or immunity, few realize that B6 is one of the most crucial nutrients for mental calmness and healthy sleep. Vitamin B6, or pyridoxine, is essential for producing neurotransmitters, the brain's chemical messengers, such as serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. These substances are directly responsible for regulating mood, relaxation, and the sleep-wake cycle. Without enough B6, your brain struggles to convert tryptophan into serotonin, which then converts into melatonin, the hormone that signals your body it's time to rest. He continued, when you're deficient in B6, your mind cannot switch off properly. You may feel restless, anxious, or wake up in the middle of the night with your heart racing. It's not your fault. It's your brain's chemistry crying for balance. Many people, especially those over 50, naturally produce less stomach acid and have difficulty absorbing nutrients from food. This makes them particularly vulnerable to deficiencies, even if their diet seems adequate. Dr. Nakamura highlighted that chronic stress, alcohol, and certain medications also deplete B6 levels, further worsening the problem. He pointed out an interesting finding. In clinical studies, participants who increased their intake of B6 not only improved their sleep quality but also reported more vivid dreams and a calmer state of mind throughout the day. The vitamin acted like a gentle reset for their nervous system. The doctor's explanation painted a vivid picture, the body as a finely tuned orchestra where each vitamin and mineral plays a note in harmony. When B6 goes missing, the entire rhythm falters. Restoring it is like bringing back the missing instrument that allows the music, your sleep, to flow once again. He then paused, offering a small, reassuring smile. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Should I rush to the pharmacy for supplements? The truth is, food is always the first medicine. B6 is abundant in natural sources like bananas, chickpeas, salmon, and poultry. However, for older adults or those under chronic stress, a well-balanced supplement can make a world of difference. He emphasized that the goal wasn't to rely on pills, but to restore what the modern lifestyle had silently drained. When the brain receives the right nutrition, it doesn't need to fight to rest. It simply knows how. Dr. Shai Nakamura often recommended his patients begin by increasing natural sources of B6 during dinner time. This timing, he said, ensures your body has enough raw material to produce serotonin and melatonin as night approaches. It's like fueling the factory before the shift begins. He concluded this part with a practical reminder. Healing sleep is not about forcing the body to rest. It's about giving it what it needs to remember how. Chapter 6. The 1-minute technique, combining nutrition and neurological activation. Now, Dr. Nakamura said with a calm smile, let me show you the 1-minute method that ties everything together. He stood up, demonstrating a slow, deliberate breathing pattern, inhaling deeply through the nose, exhaling softly through the mouth. But there was a secret twist. While breathing, he gently pressed 2 fingers on a point just above the bridge of his nose, between the eyebrows, the area neurologists call the glabella. This point, he explained, is directly connected to the frontal cortex and the hypothalamus, the brain regions that regulate stress and sleep. When gently stimulated, it sends a signal that quiets overactive neural circuits. He combined this with a slow breathing cycle, 5 seconds in, 7 seconds out, and continued. As you breathe, your brain shifts from sympathetic dominance, the fight or flight mode, into parasympathetic mode, the rest and digest state. This is the state your body must reach to fall asleep effortlessly. He instructed that this technique be performed just before bedtime, after consuming a small source of vitamin B6, such as a banana or a warm cup of milk with a pinch of turmeric. The nutrients begin to circulate, he said, and when combined with this neurological trigger, your brain receives 2 powerful messages: chemical calmness and neural relaxation. Within 1 minute, the body begins to respond. The heart rate lowers, breathing deepens, and the brain's electrical activity slows down. It's as if a switch is flipped, turning off anxiety and turning on peace. Many of his patients reported that, within days, they not only fell asleep faster, but also experienced fewer night awakenings and more vivid restorative dreams. The combination of vitamin B6 nourishment and this simple neural activation technique became their nightly ritual. Dr. Nakamura often said, "It doesn't matter how old you are. The brain can heal, the body can rest, and sleep can return. All it needs is the right message." Before concluding, he left one final piece of advice. Be patient with yourself. The modern world has taught your body to stay alert, but you can teach it to rest again. Start tonight. Breathe deeply, nourish wisely, and trust that your body still remembers how to sleep. And if you found this information valuable, consider subscribing to this channel. Every week, we explore powerful, science-based methods to help your mind and body find balance again. Your journey toward better sleep and a calmer life has only just begun.